podcast from Drew and Mike is, I think it's really cool, and that is what I wanted to say.
Two and a mic. Two, 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 two and a mic. Two, 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 two and a mic. Vlad joins me again for some debate, light-hearted argument, and some great observations on a Europeanized perspective. Am I so obvious and indeed so fallible at the same time? Further evidence for the need for reflection. My ideas are not as matured as I would have them be, perhaps. Yet this is exactly why I have these podcasts. It's important to see the world through the eyes of others, and Vladi always has the most robust view of things. Thank you again for joining me, Vlad. Vlad, it's great. What can I say to have you back, especially after such an animated discussion in our previous episode. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. Very happy to be here. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good too. I'm armed with a fresh mug of coffee because I think if today our discussion is going to be as animated as our previous talk, then I think that's something for me to definitely be prepared for. So once again, then, just quickly go back to cover the kind of points that we've been made. So you have your desert island, or an island. It doesn't have to be a desert. You have your island. I have my island, and we are identifying the best way for each of us, in our opinion, to run our island with whatever political system that we may feel, or bits of different political systems may also be applicable, that we feel would be the best way to run our societies. And then afterwards, there's a third island, which we may decide to run together. And so therefore incorporate the various ideas that we've talked about through the series of these discussions, which I've termed the discussion democracy. But as you have often said, no, Zach, we're not analyzing democracy. We're analyzing political systems, of which democracy is only one option. Yeah?
Right.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So we've reached points 4. So we've both done your 4 points. So for you, it's been history, participation, the qualifying to vote, and the qualification to hold public office. I've had rule of law, prioritizing of social concerns, the guaranteeing of certain rights to expression and protest, for example, but then also having an officially elected committee with absolute oversight over the actions of a government, and with the ability to report those actions to the people. So that's where we are, at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So without further ado, Vlad, what is your next point number 5 for you?
Okay, point number 5. So it's about the correctional system, or the penal system.
Oh.
So in my opinion, the correctional system will not have the death penalty. Its objective is it's clear, and it's resocialization, but criminals will lose the right to vote.
Oh, wow. Okay, so so no more death penalty, which a lot of democratic governments would agree with you, but not all, of course. But then if you are found guilty of having committed a crime, you lose your right to vote. Is that only for the duration of the penalty, or even after you are released from prison?
Tough question, but I would say it depends on the crime, because for sure we have killing someone is not the same as going through a red light. But I would say I will need to find a limit. Like if you are sentenced to more than 2 years of prison, then I could consider that you really lose your right to vote for for the whole life. But yeah, we can talk about it because I do see a problem if I say that the main objective is resocialization. Then for sure I should then guarantee the people that if they are resocialized, that they also get their right to vote back. But then I could imagine, you already know the comparison. It would be like with the driver's license. Then you have to do it again, and then you have to earn the right again, and it's gonna be a bit more difficult compared to the first one because I think if you are not able to live in society, then you shouldn't have the right to vote.
That's a cool point, the re-qualifying for the right to vote, because obviously there you're connecting it with your third point. What's also really interesting, Vlad, is that, I haven't even made in my top 10. So you haven't yet reached 10 points, but you've got less than 10 points, and you've already addressed penalties or managing crimes in your society. I don't have that at all. I've got policing, but I don't have the management of people who have been found guilty in the penal system. And yeah, I don't know if that tells us a lot about how practical a person you are, or maybe about how naive a person I am.
No, I think so.
But
I just
it's
think if you are
interesting.
creating a system, you have to be prepared for the case that the system does not work, or if the people are not working according to the expectations of the system. And that's why that was for me really important to have an idea. Okay, what happened if because you say rule of law, but what if you will always have a percentage of the population living in your island that they don't really care about your rule of law. So for me, it's very important to have a plan.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Some of the things that you said there, though, are quite mildly controversial, okay? Because are we then saying that if somebody, for example, society says to a person, you have to fish from a certain hour to a certain hour every day, and that person says after 3-4 weeks of constant fishing, I'm too damn tired, I'm not going out today. And then that person is found guilty of working against the interests of the community, will that person then be punished simply for doing something which is perhaps better for them as an individual? And I know I'm flipping here because you said to me in a previous discussion that I don't support individual rights enough, and so on. But I find it interesting when we talk about this, particularly because I like to be criticized. Yeah, I want people to say to me, Zach, that's wrong, because I think people have the right to say that I'm wrong, especially because there's a very good chance that they're right. One of the problems that we have with other countries is that when people say that the leaders are wrong, or that the leaders have misbehaved, or that the leaders have done things which were corrupt, quite often the circumstances follow that those reporters, who they normally are, or whistleblowers, are arrested and are tried. And so therefore, I would ask, obviously there's a legal process, but what qualifies for being the interests of the community? And how far would the interests of the individual allow a person to fight the criticism of having done something against communities?
Yeah, very good question. And I can imagine the only valid answer there. I would say you are allowed to do everything. So do you have freedom in terms of developing your own personality? But that's only valid if you are not attacking someone. So it wouldn't be for me acceptable if you say, hey, I just enjoy killing people and that's my right, so I'm going to kill people and you have to respect it. No, that's not the case. So I think you are allowed to do everything you want, but only if society isn't having a very clear negative impact because of your actions. And I know that's not that easy in the real world, because maybe, I don't know, some of your actions can just bother me, but I'm not talking about just the bothering in a very simple way. I'm talking about nobody should suffer because of your actions, or you shouldn't suffer just because someone is free or something. I don't know if the point is clear.
I completely understand the point. I'm just considering how society would judge, or more to the point, what kind of freedom society would give. Of course, it's easy to say that, you should not kill. That's one of the commandments. I think every religion would say that the right to life is fundamental and cannot be challenged. However, many political systems do not consider the right to life to be above the right of a state's to exert its need for national security. So therefore, there are, this sort of James Bond style license to kill if the state believes it's right for an individual to be killed. And this is without a trial, for example. So how much will we limit this? So you've already said that there's no such thing as the death penalty in your system. But what about people who are then considered to be a threat to society, or perhaps the threat to the stability of government? There wouldn't be a trial in that case. There would simply be the actions of certain agents. So my point is, what kind of limit can we expect to be set on the right to for free speech, the right to protest, and the right to criticize?
Yeah.
Because I think it's a tough one using the arguments that you've put there. Because if society decides for itself that one person should perhaps be punished for doing something, it kind of reminds me of some historical events where they've decided one person should be killed above another, and invariably the mob, or in this case society, doesn't always make the right decision.
Absolutely. Many things in there. I guess the first thing, we are very happy that from the very beginning we were talking about participation. And if we create our own island, I can imagine we're going to have something similar to what we call today the Congress or the Parliament or something like this. So society is going to be represented in a certain way that we can decide based on our own history, on our culture, on our past, what do we think is good and what do we think is bad. And as we were talking about participation, it means, it's maybe exaggerated now, but always the legal system is always in a beta mode. It means it can be changed every day or every year. So the same way, for example, here in Germany, till, I don't know, that wasn't even 20 years ago, that was like it was fine if you are married and you want to have sex with your wife and she doesn't want to, you have the right to have it. Something that we would say now, hey, that's not possible. They say you are raping a woman, right? But now we just changed the law, so you are not allowed to do that anymore. And we are very lucky that we changed that. So in that sense, could be that we organize some laws, some rules, and at some point we see, okay, that's not good anymore. We are why should a man has the right to decide over the body of a woman? That shouldn't be the case. So let's change the law. Let's do some new rules and so on. So I can imagine that we are developing, and I think the main goal of my system, of my island, is giving the people the real opportunity to live with dignity. And the second goal would be, let's be a better society every day, every year, every decade. So I can, or I very confident that we are going to improve and we are going to learn from the past and from the things that are happening. And this is like the control that is allowing the people on my island to every decade, every century, to have better rules that yeah, as I said many times, based on our history, culture, and past, that allow us to always drawing this line in a more clear way.
Yeah, I think it's great that you come back to those 2 points, where you talk about dignity and constant improvement, whether that's over a limited period of time or even over an extended period of time. I always refer to these things as like a legacy, in the sense that let's say you've got a project and the project lasts for 6 months and the project has to create, I don't know, a technological solution to a communication problem. What I find very often that happens is a project takes place, it does the work that it's got to do, a report is filed, everybody says, oh, wonderful, we'll consider it then. Yeah. Without any sort of consideration for legacy. So, what is the result of that work? What kind of things has the organization learned from that enterprise? And this is what I feel is missing in many organizations. It's the legacy of the work. Can you tie in all of the work that you do with the fundamental intentions of your organization? And when you do that there yourself, I feel that's cool, because then it tells me that, all right, even if a rule isn't necessarily possible to apply for events that may take place in 50 years' time, we can take the legacy of that rule and we can connect it to the founding principles of our island and find a solution that satisfies both the rule and the principle. And then you've got a chance of creating something which is better, but also practical, and something which we can all perhaps live up to and accept. Far too often that doesn't happen, and that for me is a concern. And I always feel at every level of an organization, legacy has to be an important part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's I guess this is a good summary about my first point.
Which is, you mean the history element, yeah?
Yeah, history and culture and so on. Yeah, and believe me, that's it's not really easy or something everybody would agree with it, because I don't know, maybe I'm doing a mistake starting this point, but imagine we have your island, my island, and then we have another island, and it's called Saudi Arabia, right? And they have their own culture and they have their own history, but I can imagine in our eyes they are doing almost everything wrong, right? Because they don't have, like, women, they don't have same rights, or we would maybe want at or let's say in our island, it's like everyone has the same rights. You also mentioned because of rule of law, so the same laws that apply to you, they also apply to me, and in regardless to our gender and so on. And then you have another island called Saudi Arabia, and they think, hey, sorry, but our history and our culture is different. And that's for sure a challenge then for my point. So then it's we have to see if legacy is always a good thing. I think so, and I think we should just stop with this arrogance that maybe we are facing right now about hey, we are here in our West European countries, and that's the way to live. And yeah, I don't know, that wasn't that clear as expected.
No,
but
no, it was clear in the sense that, okay, but there's a question that you haven't asked. So what do we do? Yeah. And from my response, what I would do is nothing. As in, I would perhaps say to the government of this island, if there are people among your citizens who want to come and live on my island, I would ask you to allow them to do so. However, I have no right to send people from my island onto that island and tell them they have to live like I live, because I don't think that's fair. If I want people to respect the history and legacy of my ancestral development, then I have to show the same to others, even if I disagree completely with them.
Yeah, I get the point, and I totally agree with it. Like, we are not interfering there, and we are not playing here like the most powerful state that it's gonna tell the world how they have to be organized.
Yeah, because the one of the main reasons for that is, where does that stop? Where do I stop that principle? Okay, let's say the examples that you brought for me are absolutely, yeah, complete gender equality, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt about it for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't even figure. But then what about the other issues then? What about if somebody says, yeah, on our island, for example, everybody has to play this kind of sport. It doesn't matter. And then, okay, well, 1 minute. What about that kind of sport is potentially dangerous to people who are not over a certain height? So why should I ask people to risk themselves just because it's a tradition for you to play that game or to play that sport? And they say, yeah, it's how we produce our army, for example. So if you go back to the times of Sparta, when they used to release kids at the age of 6 or 7 into the wild, and then those who survived were welcomed into the army, and that's how they managed to keep their way of life, sort of safe and sacred and so on. I couldn't accept that. I would not ever have allowed any of my children to do that. Why would I expect other people to do that, if you know what I mean? So, no, the point that you make is good. It's just a question of, because look, democracy, I'm not sure democracy travels very well. I don't think you can export democracy, even though we keep trying.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And that's one of my main points about the problem of concept traveling and concept stretching. And yeah, it's not about democracy. It's about I cannot live your life. I cannot, even if I try, my example, even if I try to be like you, there's no possibility that I can wake up at some day and say, I'm you now. So every single country, every single island should really find their own way, their own path to the society they really want to live in. And if you call it a democracy, if you call it I don't know, a Vladicracy, I don't know, but
yeah, okay. But let's go back to your original point. So point number 5, which is the penal system, which is a penal system set up to reintegrate people who have done wrong into society. And if that takes like 10 years or 20 years, the process has to remain the same. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's true. I have to say I really fan of the German penal system, because like you can get a life sentence, but it's not really a life sentence. It means that you have to be at least for 15 years, if I'm not wrong, and then they are going to see, okay, are you ready to reintegrate to society or not? So a life sentence doesn't mean like in the US, like, okay, you have to live in prison until you die. Here is like, okay, we are going to see, I don't know, after 15 years, every 2-3 years, if you are ready to go out. And I would like to have something like this.
Mm.
And in the case that you are not able to be reintegrated, then unfortunately, then you have to stay there.
Mm. This is the second podcast in a row where your point has also naturally led to my next point.
Nice.
I don't know how it's uncanny, as in even when they've been completely different points, but there are points of principle which connect. Yeah, and in the question of what you just talked about, it's integration or reintegration of those who have been punished for criminal activities. My point is very different. But first of all, have we completed the analysis of your penal reintegration process?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This is it's a bit longer than the one I read before. Yeah. So I'm sorry about the length of these things. I'm not a marketing genius. Yeah. I can't write a whole principle in 3 words like you do. All right. So number 5, society has a collective responsibility to promote and prioritize integration and inclusion in accomplishing multi-generational targets. Okay? And those targets include the sciences, arts, education, business, import and export, travel, environment, policing, law, politics, health, and exploration. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So kick me. What's wrong?
No. I'm just trying to understand. So if I get it right, you are saying.
Let me share the screen with it so you can see what it is, because then it's you can sort of reflect back on it. So it's point number 5, yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah. So I see when you talk about multi-generational targets, so you are talking about it's not only about ourselves, it's also about our sons, grandsons, and so on. So we have to think not only about what's going to happen tomorrow. We have to consider the impact of our actions also in 50, 100, 150 years, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But also that, I think that there is an inherent need to do things quickly in human society because we feel as though we need to achieve something in our individual lifetimes. And when I think back to what we consider to be sort of humanity's greatest achievements, we look at the Colosseum, we look at the pyramids, and these were projects which took longer than an individual generation. I know people say, okay, let's not forget that some of these buildings were built with slavery. There are some theories to suggest that actually the people who built the pyramids were not slaves, but they were highly respected expert builders, and that we've got that element of history completely wrong. But anyway, I don't want to argue that point necessarily. Obviously, I would never advocate slavery. What I'm trying to say, though, is that instead of trying to always hurry to build a building, hurry to get a project up and running, because I need to prove to the people in the 4 years that I have of being the leader of this city or this town, look what I have achieved. And I think this short-sightedness makes us hurry into doing things which are not always beneficial. It makes us hurry into spending money, wasting resources, wasting power of our people, when we could actually say, all right, let's think about this. We can start a project, and this project could take 3 or 4 generations even. But it's important for the development of our community in a natural manner. And then I can start it, but I don't have to be the one to finish it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And I see this problem of hurrying is also, it's sort of trickled down to the more basic elements of society. What have you done? What have you achieved today? Your boss asks. What have you achieved this week? It's like there's a constant pressure on people to produce something rather than being a part of something.
Yeah. I see the point. I'm totally with you that we shouldn't avoid this kind of pressure that we have about showing results every day and showing results. I don't know, like we have to prove ourselves that we are good enough and that I don't know where to start, but there are some things that I'm asking myself if this is really good, or maybe I'm just missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start, for example, with the arts.
Okay.
I think artists, and no matter if they are, I don't know, painters, dancers, whatever, writers, they should have the freedom to be an artist without caring about anything. That was a movement, for example, that we had, I would say 200 years ago, so 18th century, that for the first time in history, artists, they start doing art for the sake of art. And it was, how was the name of the thing? I think was the art for the art and something, because, before all the artists were working for a queen, for a king, for something, they were like a mixing politics with arts. And in my eyes, I think that was a very good change. So I would take arts out of this list, because I don't care if your paintings today are going to have an impact 100 years ago. So I want you to have all the freedom you can have while developing your next painting, your next book, your next choreography, and so on. But maybe you are just trying to say something different, and I'm over engineering the point.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to say that people should not pursue these kinds of achievements. So, clearly, if that were the case, then we would have lost so much through artistic expression. And let's not forget that a lot has actually been produced through art, which has also led to political and social development. I mean, it's easy to forget, but the Renaissance was not simply a question of art, but there was also the reintroduction of ancient Greek philosophy, the reintroduction of the ability to analyze what it is to be human. I mean, humanism, as a concept, was reintroduced through the exploration of ancient lost texts. And this appeared at the time of the Renaissance. And art simply allowed this to be reproduced in different ways. So I completely agree that artistry or artists should be given the freedom of expression. Absolutely. The only thing that I'm removing from that freedom of expression is that the artist should not be told they've got 1 month to deliver that art. I'm saying the artist should take as much time as the artist believes is needed to deliver that art.
Yeah, very interesting what you just said. In my eyes, the Renaissance was just Europeans looking for some excuses to put European in the center of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be another discussion about history. And yeah, the first thing they found was the whole the Greek philosophy and so on, and yeah, another discussion. Maybe just write it down for our next podcast session about history and how Europe always achieve mislabeling history and so on. But okay, yeah.
Okay, all right. Do you know what? I'm not going to respond to that because you're right. We need to have a proper discussion about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, then I get the point, and then I'm with you. Then I see we are the same opinion there. So collective responsibility and multi-generational targets. Yeah, I see one. I know you're talking just about your island. I just want to be sure that these targets are only valid for your island, and I don't want to have this responsibility with mine. Why? Let's talk again about reality, history, and so on. If your island, I don't know, let's say your island is called Europe, right? Just a random name. And you are doing everything wrong with the environment. You are really like killing the planet. And after 200 years, you achieve a certain, a beautiful level of life, where you have a nice infrastructure, and you have really nice railways and highways and everything. And then at some point you realize, wow, we have to stop, because the planet is, yeah, it's not really doing good with all the advance that we are having. Yeah. And then imagine my island, I don't know, it's maybe South America or Africa, and we don't have this evolution, or this all this infrastructure that you already have. Then please don't come to me telling me I have to take care of the environment, and I have to reduce my emissions, because we are fucking up the earth. So that would be like, okay, this is for you and not for me. And then, okay, if you are shifted already, then okay, yeah, for sure, then stop, then try to be not that fast. But I can imagine you get the point.
I do. And luckily I shared my document with you, so you can see my point number 7. So we can come back to that and reassess it later on at the correct time.
On purpose, I stopped reading the points, so I can it remain a surprise for me next time.
Okay, all right, cool. So I'll stop sharing that then, because it makes your ability to disregard it easier. But now I need to work out how on earth I can stop sharing.
No worries, I'm not looking at it.
Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I enjoy the examples that you bring. It's amazing that you bring the random choice of word for Europe. Look, I think it's absolutely impossible to overlook the hypocrisy of the some of the solutions which are being sort of presented with regards to climate change. So, telling countries like India that they have to reduce their emissions targets by 2035, 2038 or whatever, and India responds with, yeah, we can do it by 2060, because we actually have to achieve a certain level of development before we can even consider reducing our carbon emissions. Yeah, I think it's simply not enough to turn around and expect other countries to stop doing what we have already done, as you correctly point out. However, there is a need, because we've identified there is a need for the planet to reverse the heating process as much as possible. Now, how much can we as humans influence that development? Are we then playing the role of God by trying to reverse that process? Far more intelligent people than I have to answer those questions. I don't know. But again, this comes back to the other point which I raised earlier, which is mutual assistance. Yeah, we are in this together. There is only one human race. So there is no, it's like the solution also that we have to the pandemic. I mean, I think lots of governments have turned around and said, the corona pandemic is not over until it's over for everyone. Yeah, it's not enough to only have the vaccinations for Europe and North America and Australia and Japan and South Korea and so on. It needs to be accessible to the whole world, because if it's not, with the globalist sort of travel situation that we've got, it's going to come back and come back and come back. And I think it's just the same issues that we have with other, in other situations. Climate change, we're not simply going to build a bubble over Europe and the rest of the world is going to go to shit. And that we're okay. No, that's not how it works. It's one planet. We need to find a solution collectively. So, I do believe this is one of the issues that we far too often overlook. We're too focused on possession. This is my country. This is my, natural resource. I can do what I want with it. And on the other hand, we are too arrogant.
Yeah.
No, but I know better than you do what you should do with your resources. I don't think we can afford to still be this way. We need to have evolved beyond that. Sorry, Vlad, I talk too much again. Please.
No. I really love. I have to admit, this is till now the most interesting point of our list, because I was wondering when this moment would come, and now we really realize that even if you have the best system, you are not alone. So even if I create the best system for my island, I have to see how I'm gonna organize my relations, my official relationships to the other islands. And that's why this is fantastic what we are talking about right now. And I would say, yeah, I understand all your points. We only have one planet, that's true, but it means we need common solutions. And I'm totally okay, because I know that there's no possibility that all islands can develop at the same pace. And for sure, we are going to have islands that are far more developed compared to others. But now, okay, then we have the problem. And if we stay with the example that I mentioned at the beginning of this point, then if you are completely rich and you have a nice infrastructure and so on, then it's up to you if you want me to go the same path. If you say, hey, no, that's not good for the planet, then okay, then help me, but then with a real help, right? I know there was a case some years ago with Ecuador. I don't know if you know about that case, that the president of Ecuador, he talked to the international community and said, like, hey, in order to maintain my people with dignity, in order to have a normal economic growth, I need to start doing, I don't know, something with the how do you call it, with the Wald with
the forests.
With the forests, right? Yeah. They need to look for natural resources in the forest, very bad for the planet, and that was not only bad for Ecuador, but bad for the whole world. If they would start like I don't know,
doing what something Brazil is doing,
yeah. And then he said, he's in at least in my opinion, a very smart guy. He's also understand a lot of economics and so on. So he talked very in a very honest and very open way to the international community. So guys, I need that for my economy, because I need, I don't know, let's say 10 billions, but I know we need that for the planet. So I offer you a deal. You can, as a world, as international community, give me the 10 billion. And I promise you, I'm not going to touch this forest. And what happened? Nobody sent anything to Ecuador. And what's happening right now? They are, devastating this forest. So I would say, but then I would expect from you, if in that case you are the most developed island, that if I tell you, hey, I need to do this, but that would be also bad for you. So I just need, I don't know, 2 millions. then that you say, okay, then let's see how we can organize. Maybe I cannot give you 2, I can give you only 10% of it, but there are other islands, and let's find a common solution.
Yeah. I mean, this also goes down to the economic pursuits. I mean, why is a certain resource so important? Is there no alternative resource? Is the thing that you're trying to create necessary? Is this simply an option to enrich a certain group of individuals within society, or is there an absolute need? I mean, is this like is there a specific plant which has certain healing properties that needs to be sort of mined for to take care of a disease which the local people have? There are so many factors which could be considered. I'm not just talking about the Ecuadorian example. I mean, with regards to any other kind of situation that may arise. I think that the approach that the Ecuadorian president took was the correct one. The fact that the international community neglected to come up with a solution says a lot about the international community, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. So I guess we have a very similar opinion here, and I can imagine that we also need an international system with maybe better rules compared to what we are having right now.
Oh man, how many future episodes are we planning here? Because okay, we've got no, that's fair enough, Vlad. You're right. The international organizations. I mean, okay, we're not going to talk about them here,
No.
but I think that there are lots of international or multinational organizations that really, I'm not sure how beneficial they are to the world as it is today. I think they were established at a certain time in the past. They were established by certain kinds of people in the past that are not in any way representative of the world in which we live today. And as you kind of referred to earlier, or in the previous podcast, laws can be updated to suit the changing needs and principles of society. For some reason, though, there are other parts of human organization that haven't been addressed in this way, and I think one of those is in the form of international organizations, international banking, international security and safety concerns. These are all organizations that have existed now for 60 or 70 years, and for some reason we don't seem to have the courage to ask the same question: why are these things necessary today? And I think it does take a certain amount of courage to ask that question. Unfortunately, I don't see the responsible politicians who are courageous enough to ask those questions.
Yeah, tough ones, but yeah. I don't know. I have nothing to add right now.
Yeah, no, but
I'm with you.
but I'd like to think that your island and my island would be able to have a sort of a friendly conversation, and that would come up with mutual solutions.
Yeah, sure. And it's not going to be easy. That's one thing that we also have to know, right? It's because I have to respect your own system and so on, because if we are avoiding this, or at least we are trying to avoid that you play the role of the arrogant one who knows what's best for me, that's something we don't have to have. And if we want to talk to each other as equals, then it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be beautiful and challenging.
Which is a wonderful place to actually bring our discussion to a natural conclusion, because I think each of the points that we will present in the next session will also require extensive debate in the same way that these ones have. And so therefore I wouldn't want to hurry into another a discussion without giving it its sort of due attention. Vlad, fantastic. Yeah, I really enjoyed another podcast session with you. Are there any final points or comments that you'd like to make?
No, I also enjoyed this session, and I'm very looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much, Vlad. It's so good to be able to have these chats with you. I love the fact that you are not inclined to agree with me at any point, and yet sometimes you still say that you agree with me. That's wonderful of you. So thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you very much. Bye.